Welcome once again to the CRT, the real deal, the Corona Resource Team. So what's the real deal going on out there with this coronavirus in various industries? We have the core group that we'll start off and say hello to again. Kevin Adelson, MobileIt, top 100 in the country if you have IT issues. And if you do, after you talk to him, you won't. Moving right on to Bobby, who has resolved billions and billions of dollars in claims as a public adjuster in the insurance world. Bobby's in the house.
Thank you.
And moving on to Justin Trivax, who's similar to Kevin, is not a member of the Dollar Shave Club. Justin's feeling good though, back in action after the corona struck him a few weeks back, but he's back to normal, back to his marathons and his triathlete style. And Stuart Gold, bankruptcy attorney extraordinaire, trustee, well-respected guy in the bankruptcy world. And then we have, finally, Melanie Duquesnel, not to be mispronounced, from the Michigan Better Business Bureau. She is the president of the Michigan Better Business Bureau. There's actually two BBBs to be specific, but Melanie will explain technically which one she runs. And why don't we just start off with Melanie? So Melanie, we're going to ask you what the real deal is in various different areas. We're going to toss around from myself to Justin and things of that nature. And I know you used to work at the SBA, correct?
Correct. So it's my first job in the grand state of Michigan.
Yeah. And talk about the SBA, because there's some new funding that Congress passed last week. What's the real deal, as best as you know, on these SBA PPP? I know you're not in banking. We did have the banker on. But what's the real deal behind what your former colleagues and buddies are telling you at the SBA for any business owners that are out there?
Well, the challenge that the SBA had is that it was all thrown in their laps overnight and expected to run like nothing ever was a problem. The difficulty is that, one, they didn't have the staffing. Two, the banks weren't ready because it is a glorified SBA 7A loan with a nuance of potentially that the borrower wouldn't have to repay the money ever, as long as they kept their same staffing levels. And it's the government's way, in my opinion, of moving, instead of giving everybody unemployment and potentially shutting all these businesses down, it allows the businesses to run, not impact unemployment. But the problem is that the funnel was wide at the top and very skinny at the bottom. So the difficulty is that you saw a lot of very entrenched banking relationships get funded for very large dollar amounts, such as Ruth Chris or Potbelly, or a whole bunch of Shake Shack was the third one that I can remember. The difficulty is that from a public perception, when they're getting $20-30 million, how is that a small business loan? Right. Now, there's all kinds of ways you can look at it. You can look at it and say they have multiple locations, and each of those locations employ less than 500 people. You can look at it from the perspective that it may actually be Shake Shack, but it might be the actual franchisees, that are borrowing, which is a very small group. Or it could be that the large conglomerate, like I think it was the Ritz-Carlton, got a ridiculous amount of money. So that public perception really backfired. Fast forward, they just approved another $300 billion for this program. There's already a backlog of need that's established that, quite honestly, and I can see Bobby shaking his head, he knows full well that it's already gone. Right. That next $300 billion has already been funded because there were enough people that had already applied and were still in wait. And now they're going to say, hey, let's go apply. The difficulty is there's going to be no money by Friday. And on top of it, my challenge as an organization leader, the BBB itself can't qualify because we're a 501c6. So
crazy.
I just laid off 7 people this week because I can't keep up with it, and I don't want to strip my entire amount of cash.
Right.
Yeah. crazy that the BBB can't qualify, nor can any others, depending upon the type of entity classification you have.
Right.
Crazy.
501c6s are They don't want to do it because they see them as political lobbying groups.
Right. The BBB is a political lobbying group. Go figure that out.
Never, ever lobbied.
Right. Imagine that. All right. So let's get off that topic for a second. We're going to toss it over to Justin, who's shaking his head with the BBB being a lobby group. Well, I guess you learn something new every day. But Dr. Trivax, it's all yours.
For joining us. And, it's incredible. When I think about the BBB and my colleagues who use the BBB as a sounding board almost, as the president, really the voice and the leader of the BBB, do you feel that you are going to come out with a kind of a blueprint for certain businesses, say gyms, retail shops, even lawyer or doctor's offices, as to how they should set their instructions for those owners? Meaning, is there going to be a certain amount of people allowed into those offices or spaces? Is everyone going to need a face covering? Where do you see this coming out from a BBB perspective? And do you think that you are going to come out with those recommendations, or just leave it up to the businesses themselves?
I will tell you that we can advise, but we would advise based on the CDC guidelines or the World Health Organization. For us to mandate, our organization is not that organization. However, from what I would like my businesses to do, and I'll use a retailer that is near and dear to my heart, she is trying to figure out, she's a clothing store. She does a lot of personal fittings. How do you not get within 6 feet? How do you make sure that this works? So they are literally going through, and do they have wipes in every changing room? Do they have disinfectant spray? So after a client has gone into the changing room, are they going to spray it all down? Those are the kinds of things that she and I have actually talked about. Do we put that on her business profile that we put on our website? So people that are looking for retailers, looking for restaurants, and they want to go in and know that they're going to be safe, I would love to be able to put that on their business profile so people do feel compelled and safe as well. Is it a requirement? No. But I will tell you, as we've all gone through this, it's going to be really important for a lot of different businesses. And this is just a personal opinion. I've also, I don't know if Florence remembers this, I used to own Dairy Queens. One of my big issues with restaurants in general is that they don't take care of their restrooms. Get the steam cleaner in, please. Just get the tile clean, get the sink area clean, get the, all the crevices clean. If I could do anything, I would advise people, and maybe that's a new company I'll start, is, steam cleaning restaurant bathrooms, as gross as that is. But that is, out of all the breeding grounds that a restaurant could have beyond the kitchen, and no disrespect, I'm not trying to throw restaurants under the bus, but the restroom is probably the one area that most of their patrons go into, not just the same booth. So I would love to do that, and we're going to try to get that up and running.
Great words. So I'm going to pass this over to Stuart, who's always looking for a good seamstress. Stuart?
Why is that?
A good Dairy Queen. Come on, Justin. Melanie.
Yes, Stuart.
Custom tailored suits. That's why. I mean, what?
Oh, so sorry.
Ooh. We're having a lot of your members on this panel, right? And one of the common themes that we're hearing is that they're concerned about reopening because they don't want to, and obviously, endanger their customers. But as a lawyer, they're also concerned about, am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get sued by one of my fellow members of the Michigan Bar because somebody contracted this virus? And I know across the country this has been a discussion, and I think it's also in Michigan. Is there going to be some legislation that's going to help out your people, the small businesses or members of the BBB, so that, quite honestly, they can open without being in fear of litigation?
Well, coincidentally, we have a business, I can't actually tell you where they are because that'll give it away, but they actually had 3 cases of COVID within their office. And the difficulty is that the leadership of this global organization was not forthwith in telling their employees that this was actually happening. And all of a sudden, after the first discovery, they come in and they do a deep disinfectant one night after work, but they didn't tell the person sitting right next to that employee, and she comes down with it. So there's two. After the disinfecting of the office, people start asking, they figure it out, there's a third one. So if you want to talk about an opportunity for litigation, there's a huge opportunity. So how do we avoid that? How do we advise and guide? Following CDC guidelines, understanding what that is. And if they don't, let us help them get in contact with the right health association that's local. You know, is it Wayne County or Oakland County, et cetera. But from a litigation or potential legal issue in regards to opening or doing something in somebody's home, I believe, and we don't know it because it's so new, I believe that people think if they do what they can, they wash, they protect, they wear masks, they wear shoe coverings, they do everything outwardly that they think is the right thing to do, I don't think the consumer is going to be quick to litigate. However, as we know, and as much as I hate it, we live in a very litigious society. And the difficulty is, and no disrespect to the industry, sometimes I think people need to step off their own cliff and just say, no, this is not necessary. This COVID-19 is a very unusual beast, and we don't know all the ins and outs of it. So one of the things I do advise, especially on media interviews, take a deep breath, look around. Did they do it purposefully? If they did not do it purposefully, it's my 2 cents that you really don't have a case.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin.
Kevin.
Melanie.
Yes, sir. What can I do with you?
What can you tell me about this little itty bitty data breach that happened with the SBA? Yeah, do you know it? Do you happen to know anything about that?
I do know that there were 2 different data breaches. One was, it looked like an SBA landing page. They spoofed the landing page, and people are punching in their information on this landing page, including employer identification numbers and bank account numbers and all kinds of stuff. And it wasn't the SBA. Because people said it looked like it. The difficulty was that they didn't type in their own URL. They clicked on a link and off they went. The other one, yeah, absolutely. Spear phishing, huge. And the difficulty is that what we see regularly, not even related to this pandemic and PPP loan program, we're seeing spear phishing happening more often than not, and even on the smallest of websites. So people need to be engaged in their website. And I'll throw the BBB under the bus in that regard. We have been phished hard 10 years ago, where we were sending out to our constituents phishing. We were sending out, we really weren't, but sending out malware. And it was horrible. And we were doing everything that we could do at that point, so much so that we got invited to the table for IC3 to sit down with the Internet Commission Protection Task Force, that's the FBI and Homeland Security investigations, et cetera, because we're hearing it, we see it through our portal called Scam Tracker, where people can type in and tell us that they think they've been scammed. They may or may not have lost money, but from the perspective of what these businesses may have been thrown into now because of this, they need to verify with their banks, shut them down, make sure that they are aware that this is actually occurring. We want to make sure that there's no, because another thing that we found is that with a spear phish attempt, usually right after that is the business imposter, meaning it sounds like the business HR person that needs your social security number to do this, that, and the other. So the difficulty is that these scam artists are not silly or ignorant or dumb.
It's a business. It's a business.
Yes. Well, and it was interesting. This was something that I learned going through the FBI Citizens Academy about 8 years ago, is that gangs are no longer going after drugs. They'd much rather go after internet crime because
money.
Less likely to get caught.
Yeah, 100%. So were there, as far as you know, how many, how was it cut off? I mean, how was it mitigated? Do you know?
So I believe it was the FBI that shut down the website. Mm-hmm. And so from that perspective, but the problem is that the way that they found it is that the information's on the dark web.
Yeah, they can't do it.
So it's gone.
Yeah, and it's overseas, so yeah.
Well, and the other thing that we're finding is that when there's a spear phishing attack, it's going to 3 to 5 different continents.
Well, so, I will tell you that my company, as well as other cybersecurity firms, there's a lot of AI coming out now that is targeting spear phishing and has different algorithms that are evolving that really can help. So I don't know if you guys have looked into that, but there's big companies out there, Cisco, Barracuda, I think McAfee, Symantec, that have these cloaks that have some AI built in that's going to help with that. It won't cure it because it's still wetware, we call it in the industry, humans, the biggest cause for the problem. But excellent information, and I thank you for the information. And over to Bobby. Wait, there we go.
Without his cubby hat.
Yeah.
Right. Hi, Melanie.
Hey there.
I wanted to ask you, since so many people, so many businesses and people rely on the Better Business Bureau and the information that they provide when looking into another business.
Right.
There's going to be, businesses are going to open up, there's going to be complaints.
Yes.
They're going to make them to you.
Yes.
Are those complaints, assuming that they're all related to COVID-19,
right?
Are those going to go against the business? In other words, is everybody getting a pass on COVID-19 issues?
I'm going to say that it's very unique to the situation, because you can say, oh, COVID, but you've actually been in collections for 2 years. Yeah. You can't say that it's now a COVID problem. But at the same time, if you've been closed down, and I'll give you an example, a builder, my next door neighbor has got a building package sitting at the lumber yard, and the lumber yard called the builder and said, so are you going to pick it up?
Right.
He's like, but you're not open for me to pick it up. Well, yeah, but I just wanted to know, so could that turn into a complaint? Potentially, but the difficulty is that there's no access. So we have to look at each complaint uniquely and see, does it stand the weight of a COVID excuse? Here's another thing that we are doing in relation to COVID, though. We have asked businesses traditionally to get back to us in 7 days, not 7 business days, but 7 days, when we've written them or emailed them. If we've not heard from them in 10, are we hitting them upside the head? No, we're not. We're picking up the phone, verifying that they're even open. And then on closing a complaint, we traditionally had a 30-day goal. We are now expanding it to 90. Because again, this is unusual times. And I'll use my team as the example. If I've shrunk by 7, who handle all that? There's less people to handle the normal volume, and it's actually increasing. I'll give you a statistic for the number of complaints internationally, because we also cover Canada. We're up as a grand association over 45%. When you're looking at, I'm not the only Better Business Bureau that's laid off folks.
Right.
We need a little bit of breathing space in order to get everybody right-sided. The other thing, though, that I do want to mention is that when it comes to complaints, we are verifying with the business that there was an actual transaction. It's one thing to say, hey, they didn't show up with my quote. Well, that's not really a transaction. Or I went to their door and it was locked. Again, that's not a transaction. I am looking for that there's a business relationship with the consumer.
And so let's take it one step further. The requirement is for people to wear masks. They're for gloves. So a customer walks in and sees a couple of the employees aren't wearing masks, makes a complaint to you. So it's a little bit different than a transaction.
True.
What are you going to do in that case?
It's a really good question. We haven't had to cross that bridge. I'll give you an example. I was just in Gladwin this morning at the Ace Hardware, and all but one of the team were not wearing masks.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I'd have to say 60% of the people that were in there, and it really wasn't very busy, were not wearing masks. So I think you have to look at it from the perspective, if you're looking to be protected and you want to go into that business and you want to know for sure, pick up the phone, ask, is a requirement for your employees to wear it. Now, conversely, if you go to Meijer, it is a requirement that the team wear masks. The management is mandating, it's not a, if you want, no, they are mandating that their team wear masks.
Okay. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Passing it over.
So, Melanie, how big is the Michigan BBB, in the top 10 or 15 of the country, or what's the size of the BBB?
The size of the BBB, so we categorize it into certain levels. We are in the top 20 in terms of the size of the number of businesses in our territory.
Right.
So we follow behind Pacific Northwest. It covers Washington State, Northern Oregon, or all of Oregon, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho. When you combine all of those, oh, did I also say Hawaii? They have Hawaii in there too, and that's a ginormous one. The other one is Pacific Southwest. That covers Arizona, parts of Nevada, and Southern California. They're at what we consider a Category 7. We're a Category 6. We're on the par of Buffalo, New York, Austin, Texas, Sacramento, California, those kind of size organizations.
Got it. But so the BBB for Michigan, it's up there. And I think to Bobby's point that, let's say that I go to a drive-through, whatever the drive-through could be, whether it's Dunkin' Donuts, whether it's Einstein. Well, I don't know that Einstein actually does have drive-thrus, or Tim Hortons, whatever it may be. Any drive-thru does make a difference. And the person's not wearing a mask, right? And now I file a complaint. The consumer files a complaint. Not that I ordered a hot chocolate and they gave me a latte, or vice versa. So the complaint isn't about the product, but it's about that they're not following. So the BBB is going to get potentially flooded. I hope I'm wrong, right?
I hope you're wrong too.
I hope I'm wrong.
Right.
And as Justin has always said, as a wise physician, we need to exercise common sense. So whether it's trying to not be too litigious, and how about just trying to be understanding? The response time in general is going to be diminished, and I think is going to be greatly extended. You're going to have just in every part of the world, you don't answer your phone right away. Your phones are bouncing. It's everything. Even Justin, to a doctor, he's dealing with emergent issues, emergency-related issues. His more scheduled procedures are going to be backed up. So what's it going to look like when he's got patients that need to come in just for a follow-up visit? What's it going to be like for Stuart, or even Kevin, right? So my connection's not working right, but he's dealing with a bigger problem because one of his clients who's now working remote can't even function. So you got to prioritize. So I just really hope that the BBB takes a look at each and every situation in a practical perspective so that we know, hey, this is the real deal that's going on here behind it.
So let me go back to your example with the drive-through.
Yeah.
We would actually close that complaint beyond purview, because it's really, we're not a health organization. And I know that sounds like we're, going, oh, we can't do that. But we will take it another step and talk with the business owner to say, you may want to do this because you're making your consumer, your buyers, very uncomfortable. So we're gonna say, no, we're not the health department. No, we're not the governor's office. But we're gonna advise those businesses what may be perceived as a good thing. And I will also say, as a former Dairy Queen owner, that sometimes you can't control those people. You know, as much as you'd love to tell the employees to do exactly what you want them to do, sometimes you come back in after going to the bank and you kind of go, what just happened? So I think if we come out of this with anything, with this pandemic, I hope we come out with greater compassion and grace, patience, and understanding that everything doesn't go exactly to what we demand. What we'd like is one thing, demand is another. And I want a kinder, gentler nation? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I also want businesses to be accountable to what they say they're going to do. And that's really what BBB is all about.
That was a absolutely perfect closing. Couldn't be
that is nice.
Right. Couldn't be any better. So Melanie from the Michigan BBB, the president and CEO, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks for
your
having
wisdom,
me.
your insight, your vision of what the real deal is going to be and may look like and is currently going on is always tremendously appreciated. Stay tuned to the next episode of CRT, The Real Deal, and everyone be safe and remain healthy in today's world. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks again, Melanie.
Take care.
Thanks, Melanie.
Thank you.